What's going on, everyone? We're back with part two of the Hello Sidney and Radio Silence interview. If you haven't seen part one, I highly recommend checking it out. I'll link it down in the description below, or just head on over to HelloSydney.com or their YouTube channel, which will be linked down in the description. They have all three parts up there, but if you want to hear my commentary and join the discussion here on this channel, then be sure to join in the comments below. As I said, a lot of you have requested me to talk about this interview, so I figured this would be a great way to sort of navigate through this, allows people that haven't seen the interview to actually see it, and then we can have our discussion. But before we get started, be sure to like this video. It helps me out a lot, lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, followed by the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. And let's get into this interview and play. As I said in part one, this is the intro that's just kind of going through the crew as well as the films that they have made over the last few years. VHS, Devil's Due, obviously, Ready or Not is arguably their most popular one. And then now we're going to get Scream, and here's part two of that interview.
Without spoiling anything, that obviously, with all of the Scream movies, legacy is very front and center, and they all build so successfully on one another, while also being totally original in their own right. And that was something that from the start we knew was going to be essential in this working. That it was a love letter to all the movies, and of course to Wes, but also was going to take some of its own unique risks and carve out its own kind of path in the series. And look, it's I also think it's really rare, right, to step into a franchise that has been handled and helmed by one singular visionary, and so there was a lot of responsibility in that. And
Absolutely.
and ultimately for us, we're fans making a movie. I think that's really at the end of the day, one of the most important things for us is that we not only that we sort of do justice to how much we love these movies, but that we bring together a team of people who have the same level of love and respect for what Wes created as we do. And I think we can say now, on the other end of it, that we think we did that very successfully.
One of the things that we found through this process about Scream is that the connection between fans and movies it's kind of next level, and it's so supportive, and it's so much about like love and creating a community in a safe place. And to be able to like have all these interactions online and just with fans leading up to it, who by the way might hate us in 7 months. We don't know how the movie's going to play. But it's just been really positive, and it's so special to be a part of that. We understand what you're talking about, is what I'm saying.
And I think Matt, what you said is really interesting, is that the movies have created this kind of safe space, and I think that is in large part because, I mean, Scream, at least for me, was one of the first movies I ever saw that was self-critical in a way that wasn't cynical. That it was critical of the genre. It was critical of what those movies do and how they succeed and how they fail. But it was never mean. Like, those movies are not cynical movies. They feel wildly inclusive and like a love letter and a send up to horror in general. And I think that our job first and foremost was to just make sure that was represented in every way that it could be, in every department, with the cast, everything. And I think people, we were.
I'm going to pause it here for a moment because this is a very good point that I kind of wanted to talk about, and that I have talked about, and that is sort of what will be implemented in this upcoming Scream film. Movie references. I've talked about, playing on the reboot, remake type trend right now is a good way to put it. And it's nice to see that they're even mentioning how Scream has been notorious with, adding other films and sort of giving a nod in a lot of ways to those films, to other franchises, to the times in which this Scream film comes out. And I expect them to do the same with Scream 5. And this just kind of elaborates on that point a little bit. Plus, one last quick little thing is the fandom. I mean, they're right. And they just seem so giddy and excited to do this film, which really adds optimism for me. But at the same time, they do understand that the fans are everything, that this is our space, this is our our escape in a lot of ways from reality, from problems, from whatever. And it's nice to have, these films be quality and be sort of embracive of that audience, of that fandom, outside of the YouTubers and communities and things like that. It's nice to just have your own solitude and just jump into a film. But here, let's get back into the interview.
Not surprised, but I think we were so humbled to get to just see how big of a reach these movies have had, and how much they mean to people. And it was really just an honor to be at the center of that.
And by the title, we can say that it is expected for the movie to reach the franchise fans, but also is looking for a new audience. How the movie can be appealing for both at the same time?
We talked about a lot is that we have to make a movie that is a standalone good movie. It has to be entertaining in and of itself, full stop, end of story, but also has to be a part that's existed for 25 years. It's kind of, it's no small thing. And so for us, it was finding a way to merge those two things. And honestly, a lot of it came from the script, where your entry point is the entry point is accessible to everybody. This isn't a movie that you need to have seen 27 other movies to understand and to get into it. But your experience will be extremely heightened the more knowledge you have of those previous four. We have, I think this isn't any kind of spoiler, right? I mean, we have like a ton of Easter eggs in this thing. Like, we have so many little moments and nods and things that are big and little and tiny, and that all tie to the previous four. So there's a bit of a puzzle aspect to it, from a going into it from knowing the first four, that there's lots of things to look for. But then hopefully, if you don't catch those things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from your experience. We didn't. One of the things we didn't want to do is get bogged down in this idea of, some movies bogged down in the idea that we had to make this the fifth movie only. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right, guys? Like,
yeah, absolutely. That it wasn't so tied so specifically to
that you wouldn't be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, because ideally.
So I wanted to kind of let him finish his point, but I get this a lot in the comments from people, how he's talking about it being a standalone yet sort of pay homage to the previous films with Easter eggs, etc. Well, the thing is that every Scream, for the most part, has been a standalone. I mean, Scream 1 is obviously Scream 1. Scream 2 ties into Scream 1, but not so much direct. Like, it's almost not a direct sequel. It's just referenced, and just we know what happened in Woodsboro, and there's moments, there's scenes where they talk about and reference it, but for the most part you could watch Scream 2 and not see Scream 1 and still enjoy that movie. Same thing with 3, same thing with 4. Even 3 didn't really do anything with Scream 2. It sort of looped her back around and sort of skipped over to right into 3. And they've all had Easter eggs, things like that. So I expect this film to continue that Easter egg, but it'll be its own standalone in a lot of ways. Even if they have crazy ties and crazy Easter eggs that us fandom are like, oh my god, that's for this, and that ties into this, and different aspects. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's a sort of storyline that we believed to be fact, and it's sort of elaborated on. I don't think they'll retcon anything, but I think it'll be sort of like the Roman remedy, where Roman wasn't a retcon necessarily, it was just more of an add-on. I see a lot of that. But I do expect this film to be a standalone in a lot of ways. And even the jumping point, how they said, I assume will maintain that opening sequence where we're introduced to probably a throwaway or hopefully semi-iconic character that we all recognize who's ultimately killed off, and then that jumps into the film. So that way the entry point is a point where we're not, where if you never saw a Scream film, you can jump in and you still have an understanding, you still see what's going on, and it sort of gives you that excitement. So that's what I think that they're talking about, and just to kind of clarify the point, because again, I get a lot of comments about it. So here we go.
Someone like us could take somebody who's maybe never seen Scream or saw Scream when it came out 25 years ago and still have an enjoyable experience in this movie.
And I think the other thing that we're aiming for, and it's what the first movie did so well, is, Scream. If that was your first experience with horror, that movie is so dense with so many fun horror references that you immediately want to go back and understand more about the genre that movie is talking about. And I think for us, we also wanted to make a movie that did the same thing, that is so packed full of fun, weird Easter eggs that whether you get them or not, you are inclined to go back and watch the original Screams, all 4 of them, and the movies that sort of exist outside of the Scream verse that are also referenced, and like Matt said, to the degree that you get or don't get that stuff, the movie hopefully will play great for everyone. But it is a pretty rich experience if you if you are a Scream fan. There is a lot to unpack.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the world and the way we watch movies has changed a lot in 25 years. I mean, it's even changed a lot in the last 10 years since Scream 4 came out. So I think we were very well aware of being true to the original and the franchise, and also giving audiences something a little bit new to look forward to. And I think that'll really show through.
It has the same referential tone of the previous entries, right?
It wouldn't be a Scream movie if it wasn't self-referential and if it didn't talk about, where the genre is at in a kind of pop culture sense.
See, that's what I was talking about earlier.
I think that we can speak about what we think the kind of current state of horror is. We're going to probably get into a little bit of a potentially spoilery territory, so we probably don't. I mean, I'm trying to think how to.
Horror is, I think we talk about this all the time. Horror is at one of, if not the highest level that it's ever been playing in popular culture.
That's
right.
True.
Like it's like even like when we were growing up in the 80s, and it was still kind of a maligned thing, and it was like you had to sneak around, and then in the 90s it became mainstream, in large part thanks to Scream, but now it feels time in at least in our lifetime at least that it feels like every horror movie that comes out is a movie for everyone. It's no longer like you're a fucking weirdo if you go to horror. They're the biggest movies in the world besides Marvel, and I think it's just so special because then if you look at those movies, they're all so wildly different. Like they're not, which is I think one of the things we love so much about horror is that you can have something like The Witch exist in the same world that like Us exists in. I mean, those are 2 drastically different movies, but they kind of fall under the same banner, and it's just so exciting because you you're going to get, but you're in for something that is a horror movie, and that is just endless.
We did a fair amount of location shooting. We were on the stage for a while, but we shot in and around Wilmington as well. I think that there was, because of the nature of what this movie was, there was certainly a level of security that was unfamiliar to us. It's our first time dealing with a shoot where the plot, the characters, where it's all so sensitive, and the team did a really good job of, I think, keeping things under wraps as much as they could. And at the end of the day, I think what we've learned is that the real Scream fans, like, they want to be surprised. For as much as there's like, oh, I want to know what happens. We've been really amazed to see just how anti-spoiler the Scream fans are. You know, the movie, you only get to have the experience
We're a
watching it
patient
for the
fan
first
base.
time once, and I think people really want that to be as fun and as scary and as mysterious and as it can be, and so I think and that's going to be the challenge with the trailer. Honestly, like it's a there's a lot of this movie that can get spoiled really easily, and we're so curious to see how the marketing department is going to thread the needle, because it's a very narrow one.
The movie is already rated or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. It will be rated R.
So that's the end of the second interview. So I just wanted to touch on a few final thoughts, a few final things. Primarily how they said Wilmington. Now I've seen a couple comments. I've seen a couple videos where people are seem like, oh well, does that mean it's not in Woodsboro? Well, you got to take into account that the pandemic happened and California was a lot more strict than some of these other states were. So it's very likely that that was their decision in filming in North Carolina because of that reason. Now we won't know for sure until the film comes out, but if I had to guess, that's what it is. It'll still be in Woodsboro. Maybe they'll have some parts that aren't, but for the most part, it'll be probably in Woodsboro if I had to guess. Like if I had to bet money on it, probably Woodsboro. They just filmed it in North Carolina as opposed to California or some other location because restrictions and things that they could get away with were probably a lot more laxed in those areas. The second point was the trailer. We all are dying and waiting for a trailer, and I understand their issues because it is a big issue. You don't want to give away too much. You want to give just enough to have fans excited and pumped up for the film, but you don't want to spoil any major plot points or because I mean trailers are notorious now for giving away the goods, and in a lot of ways it always has been, but it seems more and more so now in the last few years that trailers give away too much, if not all of the movie. You're basically watching a Cliff Note version of the film. A famous film that sort of ruined it for everybody was Batman vs Superman. Like that trailer was every important part in that film, and so when everyone went and saw the film, they were like, "We saw there's nothing new in this trailer. It's just like 2 hours of filler, and then the 30-minute trailer, spread out." So I understand there's sort of issues and concerns when releasing a trailer, but in all honesty, we just need something. Give us something light. It could just be something silly that we can enjoy and just get us pumped. I mean, there's so much excitement and joy around this film that they don't really need to do much to promote it and have us excited. We're all gonna be excited. They wouldn't have to do anything, and I bet you this movie would do well. I pretty much guarantee that this film would do great if they didn't do any promos. Just because you have so many people talking about it, you have content creators like myself that are making videos, diving into it. I mean, it's really hyped. But it's nice to see their excitement. It's nice to see that they understand the legacy aspect, that they understand what Scream as a whole is, and how they plan on sort of integrating all of the previous four films into this, and not just a Scream. Let's focus on Scream 1. Yes, that might be the primary focus, but it's not going to be the overall focus. You're going to have a little bit of each film, maybe subtly hint, and it's very likely that Scream 1 will be the film that they really dive into, but for the most part it's going to be pretty generic, which is good and which is what I'd like to see. But this is very refreshing as far as content with Scream 5, that they're so engaged and they're so excited for this film. It adds a lot of excitement from a viewer perspective. But get ready for part 3 tomorrow. I will, like I said, post one every day. Part 3 is the final part, and they dive into all kinds of other stuff that I don't want to spoil for you. But if you haven't yet, be sure to like this video. It helps me out a lot. It lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, followed by the bell notification so you never miss an upload. And go watch part 1 if you haven't yet, because again, it's really worth it. And it's not like, even if you watch part 1, it's not going to matter. Like, it's not going to, you don't have to watch it in order. It's fine if you watch part 1, because they talk about completely different things that have nothing to do with this interview. So it's a perfect interview to watch by itself. But anyway, I will see you all in the next one. Thank you.